Some cartoons are remembered for their charm, others for their creativity. But a rare few are remembered for how quickly they vanished. Imagine an episode so shocking, so bizarre, or so tone-deaf that networks yanked it almost immediately, never to be seen again. What does it take for an animated show designed for laughs and adventure to be pulled off the air after a single run? Stick around, because these stories will make you wonder how some of them even made it past the drawing board. Pokémon, Electric Soldier Porygon, 1997. Here's the cartoon that literally made headlines across the globe. Pokémon was at the height of its powers in the late 90s, sweeping schools, toy stores, and lunchboxes. Then came one fateful December night in Japan, when an episode titled Electric Soldier Porygon aired. It seemed like just another wild adventure with Pikachu and friends, until a scene of rapid flashing red and blue lights appeared on screen. Within minutes, hundreds of children across Japan reported feeling sick. Hospitals filled up. News anchors rushed to explain what had happened. The culprit wasn't the story itself, but a burst of intense strobe effects that triggered seizures and dizziness in viewers. Panic spread quickly. Networks apologized, parents demanded answers, and the episode was pulled from circulation immediately. It has never been rebroadcast, not even on DVD collections or streaming platforms. The fallout was huge. Pokémon took a temporary hiatus, and the word Porygon became cursed among fans, even though the poor digital duck Pokémon wasn't really at fault. In fact, Pikachu was the one on screen when the lights flashed. But guilt didn't matter. This was the day cartoons suddenly had to consider the health of their audience in ways no one had imagined. The result? A cartoon episode that became a legend of what not to do on TV. Tiny Toon Adventures. One Beer, 1991. Tiny Toon Adventures was supposed to be a playful, kid-friendly version of Looney Tunes. Instead, it briefly turned into something closer to a PSA gone wrong. In One Beer, the young characters Buster, Plucky, and Hampton stumble across a bottle of alcohol and decide to experiment. What follows is not lighthearted slapstick, but a surprisingly dark segment where the trio gets progressively more intoxicated. Their voices slur, their actions spiral, and in a final shocking gag, they steal a car, drive off a cliff, and crash. The scene ends with them turning into ghosts, laughing about their reckless choice. The intention was obvious, to parody how dangerous drinking can be. But the delivery was anything but subtle. Parents were horrified that a children's cartoon showed its characters drinking, losing control, and effectively ending themselves. Cartoon Network and other channels wasted no time. One Beer was locked away, left off rerun blocks, and excluded from VHS releases for years. It eventually surfaced in rare collections. But the damage was done. For many, it stood as proof that even cartoons aimed at kids could completely miss the tone when tackling real-world issues. And while some adults praised it as bold satire, the core audience never even got to see it, thanks to that immediate ban. Family Guy. Partial Terms of Endearment, 2010. By the time Family Guy reached its 8th season, controversy was practically its brand. But there was one episode even Fox didn't want to touch. Partial Terms of Endearment was produced, voiced, and fully animated, yet it never made it to American broadcast. The reason? The storyline tackled a subject the network wasn't comfortable with, especially in primetime slots. Instead, the episode premiered in the United Kingdom, where fans were stunned that U.S. audiences would never see it on TV. The decision drew both criticism and support. Some called it censorship, while others argued it was just a network avoiding a storm of complaints. Either way, it became the only Family Guy episode that remains unaired in the States. Fans eventually got access through DVD releases, and of course, it circulated online. But the legacy was clear. Even a show known for pushing every button imaginable had found its limit. The ban turned the episode into a forbidden treasure for hardcore fans, and the fact that it exists yet was withheld has made it one of the most talked about lost episodes in cartoon history. Peppa Pig, Mr. Skinny Legs, 2004. Peppa Pig is about as innocent as cartoons get. The show thrives on teaching toddlers everyday lessons through the eyes of Peppa and her family. But one particular episode sparked concern, not for what it showed, but for where it aired. In Mr. Skinny Legs, Peppa and George discover a friendly spider. Peppa's dad reassures them that spiders aren't scary and encourages them to treat it kindly. Seems harmless, right? Not if you live in Australia, where many spiders can actually be deadly. Parents and broadcasters quickly realized the episode could encourage kids to handle spiders in real life with potentially dangerous consequences. As a result, the episode was banned from Australian television, and networks refused to bring it back, even when parents asked for reruns. Elsewhere, the episode remained part of the show's catalog, but its absence in Australia became a point of curiosity. It's one of the rare cases where a ban wasn't about offensive humor or questionable taste, but simply about child safety in a specific country. Still, it highlighted how even the gentlest cartoons can stumble when local context isn't considered. For Australian fans, Mr. Skinny Legs remains Peppa's unseen friend. Cow and Chicken, The Great Divide, 1999. Cartoon Network's Cow and Chicken was always known for pushing boundaries, but one episode crossed a line that led to it being pulled almost instantly. The Great Divide featured a gang of female bikers storming into town, portrayed in a way that many viewers felt was built on lazy, outdated stereotypes. The depiction sparked backlash from watchdog groups and parents who argued it wasn't appropriate for a kids' comedy block. The network reacted fast. The episode aired once, then disappeared from rotation. Reruns skipped it, and later collections left it out entirely. For years, only clips and mentions survived online, turning it into a piece of cartoon infamy. What makes this case especially interesting is how it showed the thin line creators walked in the late 90s. Networks wanted edgy shows that appealed to older kids and teens, but going too far risked alienating parents and advocacy groups. The Great Divide became an example of how one misstep could erase an entire episode from history. Fans of Cow and Chicken remember it as one of the strangest and most infamous bans in Cartoon Network's catalog. The Powerpuff Girls, See Me, Feel Me, Know Me, 2003. The Powerpuff Girls had already cemented themselves as icons by the early 2000s. Three little superheroes saving Townsville with a mix of sugar, spice, and a whole lot of punch. But one episode titled See Me, Feel Me, Know Me took the show into unexpected territory. Styled as a rock opera, the episode followed Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup, teaming up with a strange gnome to bring peace to the world. Sounds quirky and harmless, until viewers noticed the heavy-handed visuals. The story was packed with religious-like undertones, imagery of citizens kneeling, and a finale that felt more like a parable than a cartoon adventure. Executives got nervous. Instead of hitting rerun blocks like every other episode, it quietly vanished. U.S. audiences never saw it during regular broadcasts. Only a few international markets aired it, and later DVD collectors unearthed the footage. Fans were left baffled. Why pull it? Some thought the subject matter was too serious for a kids' comedy. Others believed the music video-style production just didn't fit the show's usual tone. Whatever the reason, See Me, Feel Me, Know Me turned into one of those "Did I really see that?" moments. It lives on mostly through online uploads, remembered as the Powerpuff Girls episode that strayed too far from its colorful formula and paid the price with a ban. Dexter's Laboratory, Rude Removal, 1998. Dexter's Laboratory was one of Cartoon Network's crown jewels, smart, funny, and endlessly quotable. But there was one episode that even the network didn't dare release. Rude Removal. In it, Dexter invents a machine to split himself and Dee Dee into good and bad versions. The bad versions? Let's just say they came with extremely colorful vocabularies. Throughout the short, Dexter and Dee Dee's rude counterparts drop censored swears left and right. It was meant as a tongue-in-cheek parody for older viewers, but executives worried that kids would mimic the behavior, bleeps or not. So the episode was shelved. For years, fans whispered about it like an urban legend, the lost Dexter's Lab episode that was too rude to air. Then, in 2013, Cartoon Network finally uploaded it online as a one-off special event. By then, the myth had only grown, and fans rushed to see if it lived up to the hype. Spoiler: it absolutely did. Rude removal remains a cult favorite, proof that even a beloved show could go too far for its time. Family Guy, Quagmire's Dad, 2010. Family Guy has always thrived on shock value, but Quagmire's Dad took things into territory that stirred immediate backlash. The episode revolved around Quagmire's parent and featured jokes that many viewers found outdated and offensive. It wasn't the edgy humor fans were used to. It felt like the show had gone for cheap laughs in the wrong direction. After one airing, complaints rolled in, and reruns of the episode became rare. Certain networks refused to air it again, quietly distancing themselves from the controversy. For a show that built its empire on being the cartoon that gets away with everything, this episode became a surprising reminder that even Family Guy wasn't untouchable. Fans debated fiercely. Was it satire, or was it just poor judgment? Either way, Quagmire's Dad quickly joined the ranks of episodes that networks buried, rarely seeing the light of day again. Today, it's a case study in how humor can age badly and how fast networks will pull the plug when the backlash outweighs the laughs. Pokémon, Tentacool and Tentacruel, 1997. Pokémon makes this list twice, and for good reason. The franchise may be adored worldwide, but it's no stranger to bans. The episode Tentacool and Tentacruel seemed harmless at first, centering on giant sea creatures causing chaos in a seaside city. But its visuals, massive monsters toppling buildings, struck an uncomfortable chord in the late 90s, shortly after devastating real-world disasters had shaken parts of Asia. Networks feared the imagery was too close for comfort. The episode was pulled from rotation in several countries and stayed off U.S. screens for years. Fans who caught it during its first run were left with hazy memories of a giant Tentacruel smashing skyscrapers like something out of a kaiju movie. In later years, the episode resurfaced selectively, but its reputation stuck. It's one of those rare cases where timing alone doomed an episode. What might have been just another quirky Monster of the Week story instead became remembered as the Pokémon episode that got banned because reality hit too close to home. SpongeBob SquarePants, A Pal for Gary, 2010. SpongeBob has had its share of strange episodes, but A Pal for Gary still stands out as one of the most despised entries in the series. The premise was simple. SpongeBob adopts a new pet to keep Gary company. But instead of being sweet, the episode turned shockingly cruel. The new pet bullies Gary, while SpongeBob, usually the ultimate optimist, comes off as neglectful and even mean-spirited. Fans weren't laughing. They were angry. Kids cried, parents complained, and online forums lit up with outrage. Critics accused the show of betraying its core spirit, turning a lovable sponge into an oblivious villain. Nickelodeon took notice and pulled the episode from frequent rotation. While not technically erased from existence, it became one of those episodes that networks quietly avoid. To this day, A Pal for Gary is cited by many fans as the absolute low point of the series. It's a rare case where the ban wasn't about content being too edgy, but about the audience feeling betrayed by the characters they loved. And in the world of SpongeBob, that was enough to sink it. The Simpsons, One Angry Lisa, 2022. The Simpsons has weathered decades of controversy. But one episode from its 34th season hit a wall, not with American viewers, but abroad. One Angry Lisa featured a subplot that referenced certain real-world camps. While it seemed like standard satire, it wasn't received the same way everywhere. In Hong Kong, the episode was pulled entirely from Disney Plus shortly after release. What made it remarkable wasn't the jokes themselves, but the fact that The Simpsons, a show that had mocked everyone and everything under the sun, suddenly found itself blocked for political reasons. For longtime fans, it was proof that even the longest-running cartoon in history could still get caught in cultural crossfire. And the ban ensured that One Angry Lisa joined a tiny group of Simpsons episodes that you can't easily find everywhere, adding yet another layer to the show's legacy of testing limits. Cow and Chicken, Buffalo Gals, 1998. If you thought Cow and Chicken's earlier banned episode was edgy, this one turned up the heat even more. Buffalo Gals centered on a biker gang of women who break into people's homes and, oddly enough, chew on their carpets. On paper, it was supposed to be absurdist comedy. On screen, the characterization leaned into stereotypes that watchdog groups immediately flagged. The backlash was swift. Cartoon Network banned the episode after one airing, and it never returned to rotation. Over time, Buffalo Gals became infamous as a cautionary tale about writing jokes that rely too heavily on caricature. Fans who caught it live couldn't believe what they'd just watched, and those who missed it only heard rumors until clips surfaced online years later. For many, this episode stands as the wildest example of how Cow and Chicken constantly tested the limits, and sometimes went way too far. Disney's Silly Symphonies, The Country Cousin, 1936. Here's a surprising entry from the golden age of animation. Disney's Silly Symphonies produced dozens of shorts, but The Country Cousin eventually got shelved in later decades. The premise was simple. A country mouse visits his city cousin and gets overwhelmed by the big city lifestyle. The problem? Much of the humor revolved around exaggerated scenes of drinking and rowdy behavior. When television became the main outlet for kids' cartoons in the 50s and 60s, networks decided this short was too much for younger audiences. It vanished from broadcast blocks, even though it was never offensive in the traditional sense. Instead, it was just a case of older humor aging poorly in a new context. Today, The Country Cousin is available in collector's sets and on digital platforms, but its history as a banned Disney short shows how times change. What once seemed funny was later seen as irresponsible for children's viewing. Ren and Stimpy, Man's Best Friend, 1992. Ren and Stimpy was never a safe cartoon to begin with. Known for its bizarre humor, gross-out gags, and surreal tone, the show constantly pushed the envelope on Nickelodeon in the early 90s. But one episode, Man's Best Friend, went so far that the network outright refused to air it. The story introduced a new character named George Liquor, who adopts Ren and Stimpy. What was meant to be a simple pet owner scenario spiraled into pure chaos. The episode included a long, over-the-top fight sequence between Ren and George that was far more intense than anything Nickelodeon was comfortable showing. Add in heavy slapstick, exaggerated violence, and a darker-than-usual edge, and executives slammed on the brakes. Man's Best Friend never aired during the show's original run. Instead, it circulated among fans through bootlegs and became legendary as the banned Ren and Stimpy episode. Years later, it was finally released in DVD collections, but by then, its reputation had already solidified. The fallout was huge behind the scenes, too. The episode contributed to friction between creator John Kricfalusi and Nickelodeon, ultimately leading to him being removed from the show. So this wasn't just an episode that got pulled, it changed the course of the series itself. For fans, man's best friend remains a bizarre reminder of just how far Ren and Stimpy could go, and how even Nickelodeon had its limits, or just unlucky timing. Courage the Cowardly Dog, The Mask, 2002. Courage the Cowardly Dog was already known for pushing boundaries with its dark and eerie storytelling. But one episode titled The Mask stood out even among its strangest outings. It told the story of a mysterious figure who arrives at Courage's home wearing a mask and speaking in cryptic, emotional tones. The themes, centered on abusive relationships and standing up to intimidation, were unusually heavy for a kids' cartoon. While praised by some critics as one of the show's boldest and most powerful episodes, others found it far too unsettling. Networks responded by rarely airing it, with some pulling it after just one run. For years, fans treated it as a lost Courage episode, whispering about its intensity. Only later did it re-emerge through DVDs and reruns, but its reputation as the episode too dark for kids has never faded. Today, The Mask is celebrated for its artistry, but remembered as the time Courage got a little too real. So there you have it, 15 cartoons that were banned, buried, or erased after a single outing. Some were pulled for safety, others for tone-deaf jokes, and a few just for being too strange for their own good. What's fascinating is how different the reasons are, yet all led to the same result: an episode that became legend by disappearing. Which of these shocked you the most? Drop your pick in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the wild history of animation. Who knows? Your favorite childhood cartoon might have a lost episode hiding in the vaults.